What is going on with the LPR affiliate non-compete lawsuit information? A lot of companies in the recovery space have been talking about this for years. So it's time for the rest of us to begin to understand what this is all about. Warning, this show contains fair use of public information about a past lawsuit and is only for educational purposes and news reporting. Kevin Armstrong of CU Repossession is here with me as we read through the filed complaint. So please say hello in the live chat, share your thoughts, grow your network, and learn from the best on ATI Auto Business. What's up, ecosystem? Welcome back to Industry Logistics on ATI Auto Business, where everyone learns more about the automotive industry. This is a special report. This is show 190 on Industry Logistics on ATI Auto Business. Here with me is Kevin Armstrong. We are going to take a look at the LPR non-compete lawsuit, understanding the legal complaint. A disclaimer here, the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. This is fair use of public information, referring to the legal concept that allows individuals to utilize portions of publicly available information. Anyone can use fair use if the use is for purposes such as commentary, news reporting, and teaching, such as this special report. Along with me here tonight is Kevin Armstrong of CU Repossession, and this has also been being reported on CU Repossession. I encourage everyone to get to know your ecosystem. We are ATI Auto Business, the ecosystem's possibly only truly neutral zone where this kind of special report can take place. ATI is where everyone learns more about how the automotive industry works. And so here we go into the special report of this past lawsuit. This is page 1 of 9, and this is, I will mention this before we dive into any factual background, is that I have a copy of the lawsuit. Pretty much anybody can get a copy of this complaint. This is public use of information. And in the beginning and end of a complaint, you'll find a lot of, not legal jargon as much as the parties and the venue, etc. We're not really concerned with that information, but just the factual background of what is taking place in this complaint. So let's go on to, I believe this is page 2, factual background. Kevin, you can see me and hear me okay?
Yeah, I see you fine.
Okay, great. So, in the factual background of the contractual relationship between DRN and Relentless, which I'm going to try to refer plaintiff and defendant, and feel free to jump into the live chat. Thank you so much. Whether you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, feel free to comment, add your opinion. And again, this is a teaching moment for all of us. The plaintiff provides license plate recognition, LPR, data and solutions to the auto recovery industry. If you're somebody like me and you don't use LPR, this is, I'm learning more about how LPR is used and the tools and the equipment. The plaintiff enters into license agreements with vehicle repossession agencies, who are then referred to as affiliates. And in the legal language, I guess, of their agreement, affiliate is a very structured phrase, where the affiliates purchase a package. Now, the affiliates, and I'm going to start right here, Kevin. The affiliates purchase a package of electronic hardware. So the affiliates are paying for the hardware, right?
Correct.
Okay. Referred to as an LPR kit, which includes at least one camera that's been optimized with their proprietary technology to scan and interpret license plates. So the purpose of the LPR kit is to scan and interpret license plates. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what LPR does. Okay. By the way, neither of us are attorneys. We're newsmen. We believe in understanding the details of what something is about. Okay, in Section 12 of the agreement with the affiliates, it gets legal. The agreement may be terminated by either party upon 30 days written notice. And in this case, the defendant, on October 4th, 2022, sent written notice of termination to the plaintiff, which will be relevant as we go forward. In Section 11 of the agreement, there is unambiguous promise as an inducement for the plaintiff to enter into the agreement, even though I think the defendant is paying the plaintiff for the use of the equipment. They are still, this is part of their reason to participate with their network of affiliates. And those affiliates, according to the agreement, will not compete with the plaintiff during the term of the agreement and for a period of a year after the agreement is stopped, called the restrictive period. And it's during that restrictive period they promise that they will not directly or indirectly be employed by or associated with or render services to any person or entity engaged in the business of using LPR tech and data for the purpose of recovering vehicles for the financial lending or insurance industries, which I just have the question. That sounds overly broad. I don't know.
Well, again, it is a technology that the agency purchased primarily from DRN.
But is it the equipment? Are they? Well, there's more. I guess I'll tell you what. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, and I don't want to stop you. Did you want to add anything before I read the next sentence?
No, go ahead.
All right. The defendant specifically agreed in the agreement that the above non-competitive restrictions were reasonable in duration and scope, I suppose by signing the agreement, which I think reasonable is also kind of a legal instrument in this agreement. The non-competition provisions of the agreement are necessary to protect the goodwill and other business interests of the plaintiff. It's interesting that the language is in there. I just find that interesting. I don't know what it means. Plaintiff would not have entered into the agreement pursuant to which the plaintiff paid the defendant significant amounts of money. This actually begins, I start to wonder, what are they both paying each other? I actually don't understand that.
Yeah, there's a contribution to the agency for scans and for recoveries.
They're paid for their work.
Well, they're paid for their work, correct, and that's part of the scope of the agreement. And again, it's when they entered into the agreement, it was under the premise that it was a reasonable contract, and it's one of the important parts, I assume, of putting the word reasonable in there. Mm-hmm. And then again, they had also purchased, I assume, from DRN their hardware. Okay, so there was a transaction for the purchase and a transaction going back to them in return for that. Now, my recollection is that I believe Relentless was a client of theirs for, I think, 8 years.
I saw that, yeah.
They've been with them a significant amount of time.
When they purchase the equipment, are they purchasing it? Are they leasing it? Do you know?
Purchased, to my knowledge.
Okay. So they own it?
To my knowledge, yes.
What would they do with it? Okay. I guess that's part of the question.
That's where all this goes, yeah.
So you couldn't use that after? Okay. Well, pursuant to the agreement, the plaintiff provided the defendant with licensed access to their proprietary system. Plaintiff further provided defendant with access to proprietary data, hot list data, we'll see hot list again, hit data, GPS tracking data, other proprietary confidential business processes and methods, trade secrets, confidential information. It gets very, as you read number 14, it sounds very trade secret, confidential. Again, I don't know. When we look at the list, it seems like there's a lot of other LPR companies. Do they all have this level of trade secret and confidential information? I don't know that either. I do want to read this, whatever you call that, subscript, whatever. The DRN system contains, it sounds like many, you got car detector, web repo, portal, intellectual property, software, hardware, equipment, materials. There seems to be a lot in this system package, which I guess is
it's a very deep relationship. And
Okay.
again, you
It's a
have
deep
companies that
relationship.
are very deep in this. They have, camera cars. They've got agents out scanning the streets. They pay hourly. They've got cameras on their trucks. I mean, they spend a lot of time on this. I mean, it's a significant investment. And at the same time, DRN makes a significant investment in the training and the software and all the things that they do as well.
Okay. Provided to defendant and other plaintiff affiliates, provide plaintiff with a competitive advantage over competitors. Okay, and then competitive advantage, and as you read this, I think you'd start to see the pieces of legal instruments used to make the foundation of the argument. I believe competitive advantage is another one of those. Not being a lawyer, just trying to understand what this is saying. Plaintiff invested substantial time, energy, and money into the development of its confidential information and trade secrets. In addition to the LPR data scanned, includes an array of customer data. Again, probably get into trade secret, confidential, non-compete territory. Knowledge of this info has allowed plaintiff to compete in the auto finance, auto insurance, vehicle repossession industries by competitively delivering quality products catering to the specific needs and special characteristics and requirements of each of its customers. Plaintiff has significant competitive and technological advantages, and that such proprietary information is not generally known to the public. By the way, and this is one of the reasons why I've read many complaints, even in other industries, where I find that I learn more about the industry by reading points of the complaint. In that this is helpful with auto finance, auto insurance, vehicle repossession, right? It's not just repossession, finance, insurance, etc. Okay. We're now on page 4. Pursuant to the agreement, that would be again between the plaintiff and affiliates, the LPR data scanned by defendant is owned by plaintiff. And the defendant is required to use its best efforts to scan at least 10,000 license plates per month. Is that a lot?
Not really. And again, when you look at the speed of the cameras operate on, and again, the lack of, and again, it's
So that's pretty reasonable.
yeah, it's plug and play. I mean,
Okay.
it's not
All
like
right.
you have to really stick yourself out there too far.
Okay, great. With LPR kits, it purchased from the again. Yeah, there it is, purchased from the plaintiff. So the defendant owns the equipment. Okay.
Correct.
I didn't know if it was leased but it's a purchase. Okay.
Not
And
the
there you
purchase.
go. 8-year relationship. They scanned millions of plates, which plaintiff owns all that data. I don't think there's a question there. Okay.
Well, no, that's not a question. But again, we're going back to one of the problems here, in that the plaintiff owns the data. Okay, the agent owns the camera, and we're not talking about a camera. We're talking about a set of cameras.
Right.
We're talking about cameras that cost about $10,000 a set or more.
Yeah.
And you're talking about camera cars. You're talking about man hours. So there's a significant investment from the agent as well.
Well, and without the agent, you wouldn't be able to acquire that data.
Exactly. So there is some quid pro quo here.
That's what I'm trying to gather. Okay, thank you. All right, and the plaintiff provides specialized training to the affiliate to help them maximize scanning potential of their equipment that they've purchased in ways that are not utilized or realized by competitors. All right, so training in addition to all the other customer data. Plaintiff provides affiliates with training videos, webinars, personalized training sessions, a support group. Sounds pretty, yeah, it does. Sounds like a deep relationship. I think you said that very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Including camera placement, aiming cameras. Okay. So here on page 5. I think we're about halfway through now. To maximize scan efficiency, depending on what type of camera the agent is using, what type of the vehicle. Anyways, more of the training of how to use your equipment. One purpose of the non-compete is to prevent affiliates from taking information and knowledge they learn from plaintiff and helping incorporate that into a competitor's operation. Allowing affiliates to work with competitors immediately upon termination would provide competitors with access to valuable information. That's why they have the restrictive period, it would appear.
That
Affiliates share in this competitive advantage, although they don't own the data. They just own the equipment. Do they share in the competitive advantage?
again, going back to the issue of competitive advantage and knowledge, there is contemporary knowledge that may be much more valuable than some of the older knowledge because, as it stands, there is only one other LPR provider out there active in the
Is
industry.
there? Okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
in there, within that organization, are many people previously employed by DRN.
Ah.
So it's not like
Well.
they don't have any knowledge. So
Well.
that area of knowledge isn't as broad as it may seem from this. I mean, there's going to be some things that they would adjust since these other people left. There might be other practices, other technologies. I'm not sure. But at the same time, it's not like there's some great big secret that nobody's known for 10 years that they're suddenly going to get out of this.
Well, I know that in OEMs, which there are many of, and dealerships, which there are thousands of,
Yep.
auctions, there are hundreds of, and vehicle transportation companies, again, thousands of, they all do move around from company to company, too. That
Exactly.
is how the business works. So,
Cross pollination. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So the manner in which the plaintiff generates, dispatches, processes hits, and alerts, the tools that are used, are all confidential information. Again, as I read that, I don't know. I'm just reading it. Okay. One extremely valuable benefit that the plaintiff provides its affiliates is information about, access to. You see, there's a real building of this confidential information in this language. I've been reading confidential for the past 10 points, I believe. Again, here's another one. Gain valuable knowledge about customers. Knowledge of lien holders to assign repo orders directed to agents utilizing forwarding companies. Knowledge of lien holders, forwarding companies that utilize LPR. Location, volume. I mean, it seems like the way I'm reading this, it is basically most industry knowledge in this vertical. Something like that. A majority? I don't know. A lot? Okay. The information that affiliates obtain about their customers while under contract is confidential information. Again, it seems overly broad as I read this. That is just a general takeaway from somebody who doesn't work in a legal field.
Well, and again, I'm not a lawyer either, but again, I look at it too, and I hear the same thing. It is generally very broad. When you speak of it being a vertical chain of knowledge, is to ignore the fact that there's a cross-pollination of information across the industry. And so you're going to have to ignore everything you knew once you leave. It's kind of hard to.
It is pretty hard to. I will say this, though, as I read this, we know that non-compete clauses, which had gained some individual legal power, are now losing that power that they briefly gained. So maybe non-competes will again prevail over, well, and this is why the word reasonable comes in. Is it reasonable? I don't know. The larger an affiliate's scan volume, the more valuable the scan volume is to the plaintiff. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Particularly if that competitor can approach the plaintiff's customers before the plaintiff has been afforded a reasonable opportunity to replace the scanned volume that had been previously collected. And that's one of the reasons why the plaintiff pays its affiliates to collect data to make sure that it has consistent scanned volumes. So I think what it's saying is not only does the plaintiff pay the affiliates for the work they do, but also for this competitive advantage.
Well,
which again makes me wonder, how does the affiliate share in the competitive advantage?
Well, that's exactly my point. Again, they don't have the scale to have any value in that data. The value in the data is in its scale. Again, that data is not just for the repossession industry. That data is sold amongst multiple sources, including lenders and law enforcement. Truth be told, companies like DRN, inside LPR, some of their biggest clients are outside of the repossession world. This is a small portion of their business. This is not the full meat and potatoes. So again, they're allowed to do whatever they want with the data. that is sold. It's their data. There's no question about it. It's written right in the contract. Everybody
Right, it's
signed
in
it.
there.
They agreed
Yeah.
to it. And frankly, I mean, you would think that when it is your data, as it, is it's one of those things. Is you enter into this agreement and you're agreeing to let them do as they wish with the data. And that's a pretty big leap, as we'll find later talking this topic. But it's an interesting arrangement.
Then, on page 6, we get into the crux of the issue, which is the termination of the agreement.
Yeah.
So, on October 4th, 2022, defendant provided plaintiff with written notice that they were terminating their agreement, and as it states in the complaint, the defendant failed to specify a date of termination. And given that it's a 30-day written notice, the non-compete provision in the agreement would be effective from the assumed date of termination, adding a year to November 3rd, 2023. So it would, according to this, I guess, that defendant cannot, that language of indirectly or directly and all of that, do any of that until after November 3rd, 2023. I'm assuming that will hinder their business. That they would have to go till November 4th, 2023 without doing any of that work could cripple their business.
Well, and again, that's again one of that is a big truncheon to hit them with, a big punishment. They've invested tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in this equipment, including staff that camera drivers are out there working. What you can do, lay them off for a year and start up again over a year. That's a pretty big burden.
And it is, and I think it's that then, well, let's keep going, I suppose. Insight LPR, as you mentioned, competes with the plaintiff. The defendant began working with Insight in violation of the agreement as alleged in the complaint prior to that restricted period end date, and the defendant continues to work with them as stated. And on page 7, that then leads to the cause of action, that this is a blatant violation of its non-compete obligation. So we have count 1, breach of contract, not to compete during the term of the agreement for 1 year thereafter the restrictive period, which seems to be established in the complaint. And this breach of agreement has caused injury to the plaintiff, which entitles them to damages and injunctive relief. We're going to talk about injunctive relief in a second. Looked that up. And as we taught in this language too, this is interesting. Before the end of count 1 is described, there's legal language talking about the court. It seems that requesting the court to reform the covenant, if it is possibly overbroad or whatever words they find make sense, that if it goes beyond time, geographical area, scope, that the court help rein that into what would be a reasonable restrictive period. That's my understanding as I read this. I find that very interesting.
There's an interesting clause, request within a complaint. Because again, it's almost asking for restraint.
In case it's overly broad, that's just an interpretation.
Yeah, and again,
But I find that interesting.
Well, considering the case wasn't adjudicated, that was never really put to the test.
I also know that in complaints, you will find folks that are not attorneys find language that is hard to understand. It's part of the legal process.
Yeah.
Count 2 is the attorney's fees. We don't know what those are. We don't need to know what those are. But those are basically the 2 counts of the complaint. Now, as we find out later, well, this is still in the past, but there was a dismissal order. Apparently, the plaintiff and the defendant found a way to find an agreement as it reached a compromise agreement in settlement. And this was then, I suppose, the case dismissed on July 20th, 2023. So still over a year ago. And I suppose then that's it. What I found so interesting is in 2018, it sounds like this had happened before. And it begs the question, how many times has this happened? Location Services had to pay plaintiff over $300,000 after a district court ruled in favor of plaintiff over their 1-year non-compete contract, that it's valid and enforceable, that defendant had breached its contract, and that at that time, did Location Services offer LPR?
No, not to my knowledge.
No.
In fact, that was one of the impetus for the establishment of Inside LPR.
Right.
Because again, when you look into this right here, you're seeing the remainder of Digital Dog's 1-year non-compete. Mm-hmm. They had Location Services in their earlier business model. Had done a roll-up model where they went out and they bought up a whole bunch of repossession companies all across the country. They create the nation's biggest repo company.
Really?
The thing is, by purchasing them, it extinguished their contracts, I suppose, with DRN, but that was outside the terms of agreement. And so as far as any non-competition, I'm not sure what the layover was between Inside LPR and the Location Services acquisition, but it was because what had happened is when Location Services purchased these companies, from what I recall, or maybe what I'd heard, correct or incorrect, they had assumed that all those contracts, as well as with the clients, would still be standing. But in fact, what ended up happening is a lot of those contracts got canceled, and they had to go back out and resell themselves. And they found the value of some of these companies diminished as a result of this. And DRN had canceled their services, and I don't know what negotiations did or didn't happen over there, but it didn't go well. Not for Location Services, that's for sure.
Yeah, apparently. We'll keep going. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here is, just again, this, I suppose, comes out of the affiliate agreement. That this is on a page of the affiliate agreement. Here is the non-compete clause. It reads just as described in the complaint. So it's not that they didn't have. And actually, so one of the things I wanted to take a pause here. This is why it's so important to read agreements, right? But in life, we have so many agreements, it's hard to read every line of every agreement put in front of us. And yet, the importance. We know it's important. And I don't know how often anyone goes through an agreement line by line, underlining things, but it sure might have helped at the time.
Well, again, I think this restrictive period, again, it's pretty broad. It's pretty sweeping. I mean, you look at it and you have, you're prohibited from having any ownership, management, operation.
I know.
It's everything. I mean, you can't even breathe on a camera. It pretty much, it's pretty all-encompassing.
And you've bought the thing. That's the part that actually surprised me. I thought they were buying a license, but they own the equipment?
Yeah. The agency.
What would you do with it after?
Bingo.
I really don't know. I really don't know what you would do with it afterward. Injunctive relief, also known as an injunction, is a court order that prevents or requires a specific action. I think in the injunctive relief, when it came to Inside LPR, I'm guessing they wanted to stop defendant from working with other LPR company, and that would be the injunction. That's what I'm assuming.
I would assume that as well, yeah.
Given the dismissal of the case, that also became the injunction, I suppose. The request for injunction ended, I suppose.
Well, and again, I think when we look back at the full breadth of the original complaint, the contract, maintaining competitive advantage is one of the key things you keep seeing in this. And they use this contract to maintain that competitive advantage, and it's clear. In fact, before Inside LPR, InviTrack was purchased by DRN, and there was basically nowhere else to go. It was a one product industry. There's nowhere else they can go. So the contract enforced itself more or less. But before that, there was competition with NBTrack. So they had that competition. And, they had that brief period where you saw there within with the location services lawsuit against inside LPR and all that, they were fighting the competition. Again, they want to maintain that competitive advantage. And they do it through the contract, they do it through the courts. And we're looking at what happened to Relentless. And, well, they stepped over that line and the contract was enforced. And nobody's questioning the validity of the contract. I think what's really the question is, why would somebody be so desperate? I don't think that's really the word, but eager, maybe, to put themselves in harm's way, judicially, obviously, to violate that contract. I mean, there was something going on there that, we can't. Your volume's off, Jay.
Thanks. Sorry. It begs the question. I was just in the live chat. It begs the question. How many times has this happened? How many companies have found themselves in this position? In one way or another, whether it went to legal action or it just turned into, hey, did you read that section of your agreement that says that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's really what I really, and I wonder if that's what's being talked about. I want to keep going. I don't want to get too far in the weeds. I don't want to speculate too much. I really don't. But I do want to add information to what it is that there is so much talk about. By the way, an affiliate contract with a non-compete agreement is a legal document, and it does restrict an affiliate business from directly competing with the company within a specified time, geographic area, essentially preventing the affiliate from starting or operating a similar business that could draw away customers from the original company, even if the affiliate is not directly employed by them. So this is a thing, obviously. But in the scope of restriction, again, these agreements usually define a specific activity considered to be competitive, product, services, designated geographical area, which again, I think goes into, and it says reasonable terms, to be upheld in court must be drafted with reasonable time, geographic limitations, and again, can't be overly broad, which I do find interesting in that one part we looked at. Is it possible it's overly broad? I don't even know.
I'm not a lawyer. And again, even a lawyer couldn't tell you. You'd still need a judge to educate that.
And that thing is, and I think part of it, if you signed it and you signed that it is reasonable, it doesn't matter if you later think it's overly broad. And I think that was also part of the use of a non-compete agreement to protect a company's confidential information, trade secrets, is by preventing former employees. And again, employees, were they employees? They were affiliates that owned the equipment. Again, I couldn't just find a legal situation that directly matched this kind of, you purchase the equipment, you're doing the work, and then are there this many companies that offer LPR services?
Nope.
What is this list? Do you know?
Which list are you talking about? I'm sorry.
Well, can you see, I'm now sharing LPR services, and there's this bullet list, DRN, MVTrack, which aren't DRN and MVTrack now owned by the same parent company? Something like that?
Yeah, and again, but these are not major contenders in the LPR world, to my knowledge, at least not in the repossession industry. MVTrack is now owned by DRN.
Okay.
Plate Locate, they were acquired, I believe, by Insight.
Okay.
I'm not even familiar with the rest of them other than Vigilance Solutions, which is, again, a subsidiary of Motorola, who owns DRN.
Yeah. And look, Flock Safety, Motorola, and Insight's not listed on here, which I'm not sure how old this list is either. Trying to research this wasn't the easiest thing. Cameras and software to capture and record license plate information is LPR technology. And like you said, used for many different things: surveillance, security, parking, lending. You have cameras, software, and other technologies. And these LPR systems, as you said, they're not cheap.
No,
And it doesn't sound like there's many places to get one.
not a good one. I mean, there's some cheap models out there, and I've had on my website people who had the idea they could operate from a cell phone and through cheap cameras obtained from China and whatever. But again, they don't have the network, they don't have the training, they don't have the scale. And again, everything goes back to scale when you're looking at LPR. You need to have a huge bank of data for it to be available, because from that you draw good data, good statistics, good insight, knowledge, intelligence, however you want to put it. So somebody out there who's got 10 LPR clients from 10 different agencies across the country, their data is really not worth much. Okay, but when you have a dozen people in every major metropolitan town running these plates through apartment complex, shopping centers, theaters, gyms, whatever, you're picking up a lot of valuable intelligence. And so that data becomes very valuable. There's some great things that go on with LPR. I mean, you hear about children being rescued, crimes being solved. There's some really good stuff going on with it. And again, it's kind of the saddest thing I think about the LPR situation is there's a lot of dissatisfaction in the repo industry from it, that because they don't feel like maybe they've gotten everything out of they should, because it's delved off into other areas. And the data that they're providing into that pool isn't necessarily going to help them as much as maybe other people. And, that's part of the compensation that companies like Inside LPR and DRN and acquire from this, is that they acquire that data and reuse it for other purposes. So there's multiple streams of income that they acquire from it. So it's not a direct, scan repo. It's not like that. It's data acquisition. They're data brokers.
I would think that, and that's also part of this examination, news and education, is that I would think that this would create a tense environment in the industry.
Tenants environment.
Anxiety.
Oh, tenants anxiety.
Tension and anxiety.
Tension anxiety. I don't know about that, but again,
No?
I'm going to go back to the motivation for Relentless to breach contract as they did. There was obviously some, and again, other than the fact they didn't want their cameras sitting around for a year, they wanted to jump ship pretty bad. And so, that they're not here to explain themselves. And I'm not going to try to read too much between lines, but it's clear they were motivated by something. And I don't think it was greed. I think it was a dissatisfaction. And there's a number of reasons it could be. And I'm not going to speculate. Like I said, they're not here.
Yeah. Well, we'll take this moment to say, I'll go to camera one on this, is that anyone with a question and further information is invited on the house to be on ATI on a future show to explain your point of view, opinion, facts, whatever it is about this LPR, affiliates, information. This is not, I hope this isn't the last discussion about this. It could be.
Well, Jay, when you and I first started talking about doing this show on this topic, the idea was we're going to bring in a bunch of other people and we're going to get some firsthand user feelings about the situation. And as the more people we reached out to, the more people said no. And again, a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings, but they're not willing to come forward and air their concerns too openly. And that's it's understandable, because again, they want to maintain a relationship. And again, DRN for a lot of agencies has been very good to them. I have no grief with DRN personally. Jeremiah, I always consider to be a friend. However, this is a situation where we're looking at this litigation that it didn't go to fruition. But again, the lawsuit was filed, it was settled, it was very public. And I find that, the display of the use of the contract as it was a warning shot to the industry, which is, I think, how everybody took it. And kind of keeps everybody in line. And again, they signed the contract. I'm not saying the contract's not valid. I'm not saying DRN didn't have a valid reason. I'm just saying there's right, there's wrong, and then there's the law. And this is the law, and I'm not going to dispute that. How anyone feels beyond that, that's on them.
We got some pretty good comments in the live chat. I'm going to back this up a little bit. You're seeing the current live chat, and feel free to chat, and please do leave a like or a comment or send me an email. autotransportintel@gmail.com. ATI is the neutral zone. This is the one channel. I know it's a little harsh. Sounds unfair to the other channels, but I think this is the only place. This is the second lawsuit I've done on this channel, and it wasn't a popular show, but it is very important to the industry. Mark says repo companies pay for the cameras and other costs. The plaintiff sells her scans to other competitors who can get the collateral over the company that actually scanned the plates. That's interesting. Valuable information is the actual scan and location of the collateral where it's scanned at. All the other scans are worthless because they're on roadways or highways and have no real value. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting opinions being shared.
Well, and again, it goes back to the whole point of what is the value of the data. And again, like you said, you got a car going 65 miles an hour going the opposite direction on the highway at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. That data is worthless. Worthless. You get that residential stuff in the middle of the night, it's gold. And again, there is a huge pool of data that they have. And again, it drills down to the plate number, which goes back up to a VIN number, which means hypothetically they can take this data and they can score it for where it was spotted, when it was spotted, and how valuable it is. And based upon that information, they know the probability, or can kind of acquire a probability of when that vehicle, or how likely it is that vehicle can be recovered. And using that, again, they're selling data to numerous people, including the lenders. The lenders can strategize the collection strategies, et cetera, on that. Now, is that necessarily good for the recovery industry? I don't know. But I can say is that that kind of behavior wouldn't necessarily improve recovery rates for the agents.
And Wayne says, I can't think of anything an affiliate could take to a competitor by going to work for a competitor. I was actually wondering that too. Other than the equipment, what are you bringing them? Because doesn't the repo company do repo work?
Right.
They're a service provider, right?
Exactly.
Like a construction worker or other service provider.
Yeah.
They're not reinventing. Nobody's reinventing their own LPR technology, are they? I don't know.
I've heard other people talk about I'm going to do my own, or I just work my stuff internally, and it's not effective. And again, it goes back to that whole I talked about aggregation of data. The larger the database, the more valuable it is. And again, one agency, even with a dozen trucks, that data is only going to be so valuable. And it's like looking through a keyhole at a geographic area. It's not giving the same kind of breadth as you would get if you're in a larger metropolitan area where you have multiple agencies working with multiple trucks and cameras. And, you get a really good picture of the lay of the land and what's out there over a historical period of time. And again, you can take all that data, put it together, score it for its value. Then you can strategize on what to do with it beyond that, I guess.
Brandon says you can't even bring the equipment. So I don't know. I'm just going to do a few more pieces of information. Right. Again, this is a vast, it's a lot of hits. It's a lot of data. It's not like it's 5 customers, like in airlines, there's only a few people doing it, like ocean vessel shipping. This is so many. I just think that the volume of the data dilutes the confidentiality, but that's just an opinion. It's a question. All right, metal detector. So I'm gonna go. This is J. Now this is the J part. Okay, I'm gonna go. I want to go do metal detection on the beach, and I think that this company's got the best metal detector. So I go buy the metal detector. I can't now go buy a different metal detector without talking to that metal detector company. If they created an ironclad agreement that made it that I couldn't do that, right? Okay. It's a question, just an idea. Let's go a little further. The Ghostbusters. They have a ghost trap, okay? And hopefully everyone's right. We got through the legal part. We're now just going to go into kind of speculation. The Ghostbusters invented the ghost trap. This is pretty unique technology, right? All right. The Ghostbusters also have many other aspects of ghostbusting equipment. So if you go on and sign as an affiliate of the Ghostbusters, and you buy the equipment and you work for the Ghostbusters, well, you own that equipment. But is it still proprietary? What they've created? What if you want to go work for the Ghoulbusters with the ghost busting equipment you've purchased? I asked the question. Well, all right, so you share this image. Please explain what this is and why you think this is relevant.
Well, here's one of the things. Agencies will have camera cars running around and running through apartment complex parking lots, as is the case that this photo originated from. And what had happened is an LPR car had gone through, got the plate. An agent showed up requesting the repo, and as they show up, another agency shows up, and they just got the assignment, being alerted that the car was there. And so they get into a push and shove. One agency's getting ready to lift it and take it away. The other one comes up behind it, lifts it by the rear wheels. And that's what we're looking at. This is a real situation that happened in 2023, April. Yeah. And,
sounds dangerous.
Well, the question is, and again, it's damaging the vehicle. It is a bad image for everybody. It's not good for anybody. But when you have done all the labor to spot that vehicle and you request the recovery of it, and somebody else snatches it out from underneath you, it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, as this one did. And this kind of story played itself out numerous times. I've heard of fist fights, guns drawn, and a number of
video.
Things.
Yeah, I saw a video with gunshots in Chicago, and multiple tow trucks ramming and smashing. It was crazy. It was hard to believe that it was real. What's interesting is in this moment, and really we haven't even talked about in the last 48 minutes, we have not talked about the buyer, the owner that's caught up in the middle of all of this. And we know that when we look at the federal regulations, who are they looking out for? The owner.
Consumer.
The consumer.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so within all this, and that's another reason why I think there is anxiety that's coming out because of all of this. Legal tension usually creates some anxiety.
Well, it's been a litigious issue for years. I mean, for years, you've heard politicians coming forward trying to outlaw it. They've tried that here in California too. And the argument has always been a good one, and it's valid. And again, is it illegal for you to take a picture of a car on the street if you pick up the license number? Okay. Is that private? You can't share that. You can't say, hey, I took a picture of down my street here. Here's all the cars that were on it on this day at that time. Well, I mean, that's literally what LPR is doing. It's giving you a snapshot of what was on that street in its data collected. Now, how it's used is differently because, again, it's aggregated, it's sold, it's manipulated in a different way than maybe in a social media platform would do. But at the same time, that anxiety, and again, it goes back to what was the motivation for Relentless. And again, they're not here to speak for themselves.
Right. That is such a good question. What was the motivation behind the termination?
Yeah, the thing is, you go on social media anytime there's any kind of a discussion on LPR, and you get a lot of very strong feelings. And again, as we see as well on some of the chat that we have here, there's a lot of dissatisfaction with it. And it's kind of sad because, I mean, this has been around for like 14 years, 15 years, whatever it is now. And it was, really some of the initial investments of LPR through the Palantir Group and Court D. Hart and Todd Hodnett of RDN. They were founders of this, and it was for the repo industry, and it's growing so much bigger, and that's great. It really, really is. But sometimes it kind of feels like the repo industry's been left is the redheaded stepchild of the whole operation.
I want to jump in. Scott Jackson, not true. The data going down the highway is not worthless. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.
Well, and again, Scott was the
This is a discussion.
Scott was the inventor of MD-Track, and so Scott is very aware of that value. Worthless? No, I agree, it's not worthless. But at the same time, as far as okay, where are you going to send a truck to pick it up at once you got that data? You're going to sit on the side of the road, wait for it to go by again? Hypothetically, they could. I mean, I've done work like that before when I worked in the field. But at the same time, what everyone's really looking for is that big golden goose of okay, I've got it at 3:00 in the morning at this resident's address, sitting in a driveway. Okay, that's good data. That's nice, actionable intelligence. Whereas moving down the highway is a lower value.
Here's a good one. Take a look at the violence in the last year. How many accounts have involved LPR?
That's a hard one because again, when you're going out to try to find this information, sometimes LPR is mentioned. Sometimes cameras are mentioned as being, recording incidents and things like that. But it's not always. Again, what we find out through the other presses, local presses, is often very limited and not very informed. And it's kind of one of the stinkiest things. And it's something I've complained about for years. The fact that I can tell you what I find. That doesn't mean that's all that's out there. Of all the violence that occurs that shows up on my website, is probably 1/10 of it. The murders, the deaths, things like that. A lot of that stuff is marked up as tow hits, and they kind of blur the line between the two industries. And it's a lot of it's buried, but the number of guys who get shot at and don't get hit, number of truck guys that get beaten, stabbed, things like that, it doesn't make the papers. It doesn't always make the papers. So there's a lot more out there, and we don't know how many camera cars. Well, actually, you know what? There was one in Chicago, I remember, a couple of years, and I'm trying to remember whose agent it was. I think it was Equitable or somebody. But they're a camera car driver. He got shot up just in a camera car. Then there was another guy we had recently, too. He was driving through a neighborhood. I don't think it was a camera car. I think it was a tow truck. And he's just scanning plates going down the street. Some guy chased him down, drew a gun on him, and started chasing him and firing rounds at him. So, even in the act of another one, Houston. I think it was Houston or somewhere near there. I think it was Corey Cox. I think it was one of his agents. He'd been out scanning plates, whatever like that, and pulls up to a stoplight. Somebody came out, stabbed him or something. Or is it a gas station? I don't remember. But again, just the basic act of being out in the streets in a lot of neighborhoods in certain hours of the day and night is risky. You put a repossession on there or the idea that somebody's scanning plates and you don't like that, and it's an additional motivation. So, I mean, there's high levels of risk, no question.
I just wanted to mention that there were, at Used Car Week, there were many sessions. Repossession was a huge topic at Used Car Week. I also moderated a panel and then was part of a discussion after the panel. I want to mention that apparently somebody messaged me, and again, I encourage anybody that wants to do a follow-up program or discussion on this topic, please leverage this platform. Do not think of this as a reason to stop this platform or discussion, but rather improve it and add to it. A CEO of I believe it was a dealership franchise group, used the word weaponized when referring to, I believe it was LPR technology. I don't have the transcript. This was messaged to me. But that this is known to be a bone of contention. And what you just told me, there aren't many LPR companies. Is that right?
To the best of my knowledge, yeah. I'm not aware of anything more than two.
Which usually, as we've seen in industry in America, as we review it in history books, the fewer the players, the more there is at stake when you're... And I did want to say this, when I was talking to you, listen, if I get an iPhone I love my iPhone and then I decide I don't, I can switch to Android. They don't say you can't have a phone for a year.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, again, competition is a good thing. It is a good thing because, again, it iron sharpens iron, as the sayings goes from the Bible. Okay, because again, if you are competing head to head transparently for all of your customers, everybody knows side by side what are the advantages of that they can jump from one to the other. Those people who create that service or that product, they have to work extra hard to make their product more valuable to the consumer. And it's really no different in this situation as well. But however, you have a very large restrictive period for anybody who's engaged with this one party that makes it very difficult for them to leave. And, it brings a question, is it fair? Is it contract legal? Yeah, I mean, apparently it is. I'm not going to argue that. But, is it for the betterment of the industry? Is it for the betterment and the advancement of LPR itself? I would argue no, because, again, it's keeping everything contained in a very non-competitive environment. And again, competition, confidentiality, the training. I mean, there's a lot of different facets to this lawsuit that we were discussing earlier, as well as the contract itself. But again, as for the overall value to the industry, I believe, in my humble opinion, would serve better with a much more open contract where agents can go back and forth. So I think between the two, if there was more parity between the two companies, I think the repo industry would fare much, much better.
I'd love to do more content on what is all in the equipment and everything involved. I look forward to exploring more of that next year and connecting with folks that want to help me do that. I think we're about to wrap up. We shared that photo. This is the end of the show. We are the neutral zone. Again, ATI is not just another podcast. This is a special place where you can tackle complicated automotive industry topics in an educated way. I don't ship cars. I move information. It's ATI Auto Business. Go to atiautobusiness.com. Get the podcast. Listen to it at your leisure. And it's the full automotive industry. There is a lot to learn and discuss. So, Kevin, I love what you do at CU Repossession. Thank you so much for joining me in this discussion tonight. It wasn't easy, but nothing great is.
I appreciate it, Jay. Always a pleasure. And I hope everybody got something out of this. I mean, I think it's a bigger topic than we can really cover in an hour. And like Jay said, I fully encourage anybody who wants to do a show on this, expand on it, especially those engaged in the business of LPR services. Come on, discuss this. Close some loops to the questions. Show your side. I think it's transparency. I think is the one thing that's really lacking in a lot of this. There's so much hiding behind contracts and such that it creates mistrust. And I think a lot can be gained by being more public.
I want to thank everybody in the live chat for tuning in, saying hello. Folks on both sides of the fence or in the middle of the road, everybody is included in the automotive ecosystem. That is why my Tuesday night show is called Automotive Ecosystem. So, I didn't use any sound effects on tonight's show. Tonight's show had a bit of a sober touch to it.
Give me a rim shot. Give me a rim shot.
Yeah, exactly. The program stopped because I wasn't using it. Here's a drum roll.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and there's an applause. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you, live chat. Thanks, everybody.
Good talking.
All right, good talk.
Take care.
We'll see you next year. Okay, buddy.
All right, bye.
All right, see ya. All right, and that is a cut, and I am just going to wrap up the show. Again, I want to thank everybody that tuned in. Share this. Keep talking about it. Let me know how I can help. It's ATI Auto Business on YouTube, on LinkedIn. I know you're watching the channel. Just let me know how I can help, and I'm always here and available. Media is what I do. I want to thank Draver, Superflow, AutoHall Exchange, ClearPath TMS, and maybe you could be my next sponsor. Let me know. Send me an email, autotransportintel@gmail.com. I'll run the car hauler. It's Industry Logistics. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much. Good night.